morning. Welcome to Sports News. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Super Falcons striker Asisat Oshoala has been voted the Women's Footballer of the Year. The Rivers Angels was picked ahead of compatriot Desire Paranozie and Cameroon's Annette Ndom. Oshoala also won the Youth Player of the Year ahead of compatriot Uchechi Sunday and Fabrice Ondoa of Cameroon. African champions Super Falcons capped a brilliant night for Nigeria as they were voted the Women's National Team of the Year. Nigeria Super Eagles have not moved places in the latest FIFA World Rankings for January. The reigning African champions stayed on the 9th position in Africa and 43rd in the world. Algeria stay on top, followed by Tunisia, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Ghana, Guinea, Cape Verde, Cameroon, and Mali. In the World 2014 FIFA World Cup winners, Germany sit comfortably on top of the year opening national teams rankings that parades Argentina, Colombia, Belgium, Netherlands, Brazil, Portugal, France, Spain, and Uruguay. Jose Mourinho has been charged by the Football Association for claiming there is a campaign to influence referees' decisions against his club Chelsea. Mourinho made his comments after his side were denied a penalty by referee Anthony Taylor in the 1-1 draw with Southampton on December the 28th. The Portuguese tactician has been charged with misconduct and has until January the 13th to respond to the charges. It is alleged his remarks constitute improper conduct because they allege or imply bias on the part of a referee or referees and bring the game into disrepute. In tennis, top seed Novak Djokovic was upset by Avo Karlovic of Croatia 6-7, 7-6, 6-4 while playing through a sandstorm in the Qatar Open quarterfinals today. Djokovic appeared hampered by a stiff wind, which did not prevent Karlovic from hammering down the aces to take his total in 3 matches to 67, but made it hard for the favorite to control his ground strokes. Karlovic took advantage of a second break point in the 7th game of the 3rd set with a perfect forehand pass. He will face Spain's David Ferrer in the semifinals. The Spaniard beat Germany's Dustin Brown 6-2, 6-2. And Serena Williams and John Isner propelled the United States into the final of the Hopman Cup in Perth in Australia today, recording the needed 3-love victory over the Czech Republic to ensure progress from the tournament's group stages. Williams had earlier beaten Lucy Safarova to put the U.S. 1-love up, and John Isner doubled the lead against Adam Pavlasek, winning 7-6, 6-4. He and Williams eventually ran out 6-3, 6-3 winners, Pavlasek serving a double fault on match points to put the Americans through to Saturday's final.
Game, 7 match USA. 2 sets to love. 6-3.
Court invader at a Euro Cup basketball game between Pagnorgia and Bamvid Bandima got more than he bargained for when he shoved a visiting player, but was then sent sprawling to the deck by a punch. The fan dashed into the court and pushed Sami Magia in the back, which prompted teammate Earl Rowland to come to his rescue. A scuffle ensued, forcing security to move in before the game eventually resumed after a 15-minute delay. Bamvid went on to win the match 74-68. That's it on Sports News. The news at 10 continues with Ijoma shortly.
Thanks a lot, Olumide. And on the foreign scene, the worst Ebola outbreak in history is in its 2nd year, and scientists around the world are working to develop a vaccine against the virus. Since December of 2013, when the Ebola outbreak began in West Africa, the World Health Organization reports more than 20,000 people have been infected with the virus, and of that number, 8,000 have died. The VOA's Carol Pearson reports on 2 vaccines that are being developed.
These researchers are working on a vaccine that could be among the first to be used in West Africa's Ebola epidemic. This laboratory near Rome is owned by pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline, or GSK. Several teams are working on Ebola vaccines. All say they have sped up the production process because of the urgent need and the number of lives at risk. In November, GSK said the first trial of this vaccine was well tolerated and produced an immune response in all of the 20 healthy adult volunteers who received it. The GSK vaccine promotes the production of antibodies and also triggers an immune response of certain cells that destroy the infected cells. Dr. Ricardo Cortese heads this laboratory.
The Ebola virus can't be kept under control by a vaccine that stimulates antibodies only. There is solid evidence that traditional vaccines are not enough. Our vaccine, instead, also stimulates another important branch of the immune system, the one that stimulates killer T cells that are able to recognize infected cells. The combination between two strategies is effective against Ebola.
GSK says more trials are still needed before the vaccine will be ready for widespread use. Merck, another pharmaceutical giant, announced it's resuming trials of a vaccine known by the code name VSV-Zevov. A trial of this vaccine was suspended last month after some of the volunteers reported having mild joint pain. Trials are continuing with a lower dose of the potential vaccine. The situation in West Africa has created unusual partnerships.
There's three issues I'd like to quickly touch on.
At a recent forum in Washington, Dr. Julie Gerberding, the president of Merck, said even rival pharmaceutical companies are working together.
There's some very special partnerships that are going on here, and one of them is the partnership between people who are traditionally competitors.
Several potential vaccines are being developed and are now in clinical trials. This increases the possibility of developing at least one that is effective against Ebola. And if more than one is effective, so much the better. It would increase the chances that large numbers of people could be immunized.
Now, French police are concentrating their search for the gunman who killed 12 people in Paris yesterday to the northeast of the country. They're also conducting house-to-house searches. Here's Cynthia Are with more.
Well, thanks a lot. According to media reports in the country, the two suspects stole food and petrol, firing shots as they struck at the roadside stop near Villas Cotterets. France has observed a minute's silence for the 12 people killed at the office of the satirical magazine. Speaking of attacks, Islamic State militants have attacked Iraqi security forces in the central city of Samarra, killing 2 people and injuring 28 others. The militants are said to have carried out 5 suicide bomb attacks on checkpoints along a motorway west of Samarra. Also today, strong currents and poor visibility have prevented the recovery of the tail of an Air Asia plane carrying 162 people that crashed into the Java Sea. The rear part was seen by an unmanned underwater vehicle on Wednesday, and that's the first significant debris found so far. Finally, comedian Bill Cosby received a standing ovation in Canada at the end of his first live performance since November, despite protests outside of the venue. The 77-year-old has been accused by at least 15 women of sexual assault dating back to the 70s and 80s. 3 more victims came forward on Wednesday. And that's the Foreign News Wrap-Up. It's back to you now.
Thanks a lot, Cynthia. And the main news again. President Goodluck Jonathan today dropped a bombshell at the flag-off of his presidential campaign in Lagos and said convicted MEND leader Henry Oka was paid to assassinate him in 2010. The president told the huge crowd of party leaders, supporters and various groups in attendance that the convicted leader of MEND was paid to do that. He also accused some former leaders of not funding the military since the takeover of the government by the military in 1983. And he has replied his critics who accused him of not being firm, saying he cannot run a jungle government. And the All Progressives Congress has begun exploring new campaign strategies as it shifted from the rally ground today to hold a town hall meeting in Edo State. Well, it was stated by its vice presidential candidate, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, that issues of unemployment, power and social security will be tackled if the APC is voted into power in the forthcoming election. Well, that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Hunyato. Good night.